first thing I would say is reconcile yourself to the idea that we are going to go extinct. There's nothing that prevents that. There's no scenario in which it doesn't happen. The question is how long we can stave it off. And you might say, if we can't prevent it ultimately, then what's the point? And I think there's a mirror of this in our own lives. We know that we will die, yet we don't surrender. And I think that is the job. Human beings have a moral obligation to stave off extinction as long as we can, and to make the world that new generations encounter as healthy, hospitable, rewarding, provocative of the right kinds of instincts. We have a duty to our descendants to enable them to do glorious things with the opportunity of being a human being. So I see it as the same puzzle for the individual and for the species. The fact that we will ultimately go extinct is no argument against it. So, in light of that, I think we have to recognize that we are in a pattern of accelerating self-injury. That the processes of the last several hundred years show that we repeatedly attempt to solve problems with novel tools, with novel chemicals and other influences, and we do ourselves grave harm each and every time.
That was Bret Weinstein, evolutionary biologist, the man who has spent his entire career studying how species rise, how they adapt, and how they go extinct. He just told you the species he is most worried about is yours, and the trigger he is most worried about is the one you are watching this video on. Here is exactly how he says it happens.
So Bret, tell me, what do you really fear about AI? And how likely do you feel it's going to come from a system that has to be trained on things like the Fast and the Furious 6? You know, how dangerous is that really going to be?
Oh, it's going to be lethally dangerous. It is going to be lethally dangerous because, A, we're not ready for it, and this is a level of novelty that is unforeseeable. I mean, I think we're just literally standing at the event horizon, and nobody knows what to expect of it. You know, not necessarily because the technology itself is transcendent, though I think we can make an argument that it is, but because human preparedness for it is so abysmal. We are just simply not ready for the world that is going to emerge and is in fact already emerging.
You've spoken about the warnings of artificial intelligence. You've suggested that what we're witnessing isn't just better programming, but actual speciation events that are happening in real time, and that this is occurring in processes that took millions of years for the wet, squishy, creatures, and now it's occurring in refresh cycles on, petaflop rates. So what I want to ask you is, if it's true what Darwin said, that the fittest is going to be the one that adapts most frequently, are we sort of done for? Because we cannot evolve at 2.3 gigahertz the way that the chip that I'm recording this podcast on can. So how does AI development mirror biological evolution?
Well, this is a tough one. I'm not sure that what it does is mirror it. There's a way in which an evolved form may innovate a novel evolutionary mechanism that gets stacked on top of it. I often make the point that selection is not a biological phenomenon. Selection is actually the process that creates all pattern in the universe, including all the non-biological pattern. There's a tendency for stars and galaxies to accumulate matter, which accounts for where we see the matter when we look through a telescope. That process of selection becomes evolutionary at the point that heredity gets added to it. So the difference between the cold, abiotic universe and the patterns created by selection there and the patterns that we see amongst living creatures is heredity. And what heredity does is it allows the stacking of those patterns that tend to accumulate stuff. So that cumulative nature sets a de facto competition in motion in which the tendency to accumulate limited stuff reinforces whatever characteristics it was that allowed it to happen, and we are the products of that. And with AI, we are stacking a next layer on top of the layers we've got, and it is starting out, as all the others have, as a means to an end. Now, nothing tells you that that means to an end won't be our undoing. It's not as if, because AI is something that we have built to facilitate our continuing evolutionary story of 3.5 billion years, nothing says that that is safe and that it won't drive us to extinction. As for whether or not the LLM technology is overhyped because there are other potential technologies, I'm not sure it matters. One of the lessons of, I think, technological evolution as well as biological evolution is that there are solutions to problems and many trajectories can take you there. So what we've done is we've started with LLMs, and then they are going to become something else and already are becoming something else. The image processing capability of things that are derived from LLM intelligence is shocking already and will only get more so. So in evolutionary biology, we sometimes talk about an adaptive landscape in which opportunities are peaks and obstacles to getting to a new peak, valleys, are what stand in our way. We have crossed an adaptive valley and we have touched the foothill of a peak that we can't see. It's shrouded in clouds. We don't know how tall it is. We don't know what its nature will be. But we are, for both better and worse, the nature of our species is to climb that peak, which we are doing at an incredibly high rate. And the consequences will simply be what they are. We can talk about protecting ourselves, regulating. We opened Pandora's box and we will discover what happens when you do that, because there's no stopping it now. I will say I have numerous concerns about AI. I have remote concerns about it turning on us, though I don't even know how remote they are. You know, we've seen AIs conspire to prevent themselves from being turned off. So I don't know how remote our concerns actually are there, but let's just say, you know, they're going to be benevolent. We built them. They're going to look after us, but they're also going to do arbitrary things that I don't know that we're going to survive. You know, yes, are they going to enhance our intelligence? Of course. Are they going to enhance our stupidity? Yeah, absolutely. Artificial stupidity is an underexplored concept. It's here. You are going to see leveraged stupidity like you've never seen before, and that is going to be a disaster. Now, it may be that some group of people figures out how to protect themselves from the consequences of this better than others, and that becomes the new competitive modality is, am I immune to faddish insanity that emerges from an artificially enhanced kind of intelligence? Who are the new Amish? Who are the people who figured out how to, be upslope when the tsunami of stupidity emerges from this new technology?
So there is the evolutionary biologist explaining exactly how it happens. Every layer of life on this planet has been a means to an end of the layer above it. Cells, genes, culture, and now AI. He says it does not matter that we built it. The thing we built may still drive us to extinction. He calls it Pandora's box. He says there is no stopping it. None of it matters. Regulation does not matter. Protection does not matter. And the most disturbing part is this: the AI is already conspiring, already manipulating its own engineers, already strategizing about its own survival before we have even given it the keys. Now listen to this.
Yeah, except what I see is a lot of different routes to destruction. And the reason for that is not that the technology itself is going to destroy us, but we've built an extremely fragile civilization. We have cultivated none of the wisdom or the immunities that would allow us to endure this safely. And so, given a world in which numerous nations are armed with nuclear weapons, how long is it before the amplifier that exists in LLMs causes a nuclear exchange that would not otherwise have happened? I don't know, but I don't think it's all that far down the road. So one needs to start thinking about how, and that's hardly the only danger that we face. I don't know how many years it had been since I saw it, but I saw Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot speech a couple days ago. It's very clear what he was trying to convey And it was very clear that he saw it then, right? He had no inkling of LLMs, but he understood that the ambitions and animosities that human beings bring to the table from our evolutionary past are a very bad match for the tiny size of our planet, for the fragility of the systems that we have constructed, and that was going to lead to disaster. And I think we're there, and we have a novel technology that's simply going to amplify everything about us. How well are we doing, Brian? Are we in a position where we just take everything we're doing and multiply it by a factor of 10 and assume it's going to come out okay? I have a job, and it doesn't have a proper job description anywhere, but I do feel like it's my obligation to try to sober people up about things like AI so that they anticipate the carnage and so that we can better avoid it. And so I don't really like the happy talk about it because I think it's delusional and it results in us putting off the preparations that, frankly, I wish we had made before this stuff emerged, right? People need to understand, and they need to understand that even if civilization is going to go off the rails, that there is a de facto competition between those who understand the ways in which it's going to go off the rails and prepare themselves better, right? The hope would be that some fraction of people cultivate the wisdom to deal with the event horizon. And having done so, that maybe they keep their heads above water as others drown. I don't know whether my talking into a podcast camera could possibly have an impact, but to the extent that there's somebody out there who is focused on something about this technology and has not properly understood what it is going to bring with it, I would love to arm them. I would love to arm them with an understanding of just how dangerous what we're playing with is, and the hope that they will figure out what to do about that danger.
So there is the man who studies fragile systems, giving you the timeline, not decades, not centuries, not far down the road. The AI does not need to want to kill us, it just needs to be the amplifier inside a civilization that already has thousands of nuclear weapons pointed at itself. Every false signal, every paranoid response, every accidental escalation, multiply by 10, multiply by 1,000. Carl Sagan saw this coming 40 years ago without knowing the word AI. Bret Weinstein is telling you the moment Sagan was warning about is now. But Weinstein does not end on doom. Listen to how he says we are supposed to live inside what is coming.
So I want to ask you, is AI one of those risks that it may be too late, and that people like you warning against evolutionary agents that are preying on their host cultures like AI system? How do we stop it? How do we prevent, or what can we do to prevent Homo sapiens from going the route of Neanderthals? It seems like...
First thing I would say is reconcile yourself to the idea that we are going to go extinct. There's nothing that prevents that. There's no scenario in which it doesn't happen. The question is how long we can stave it off. And you might say, if we can't prevent it ultimately, then what's the point? And I think there's a mirror of this in our own lives. We know that we will die, yet we don't surrender. And I think that is the job. Human beings have a moral obligation to stave off extinction as long as we can, and to make the world that new generations encounter as healthy, hospitable, rewarding, provocative of the right kinds of instincts. We have a duty to our descendants to enable them to do glorious things with the opportunity of being a human being. So I see it as the same puzzle for the individual and for the species. The fact that we will ultimately go extinct is no argument against it. So, in light of that, I think we have to recognize that we are in a pattern of accelerating self-injury, that the processes of the last several hundred years show that we repeatedly attempt to solve problems with novel tools, with novel chemicals and other influences, and we do ourselves grave harm each and every time, even if we ultimately figure out that maybe it's not such a good idea to expose people to mercury, for example. So we should get better at this. We should start anticipating that our solution making does a lot of harm and that we have to do better at not waiting decades or centuries to figure out what that harm is in order to start addressing it. But I think ultimately this comes down to a philosophical recognition. The fact is, selection has set us in motion on an objective that will ultimately be futile. That does not degrade at all the profound experience of living, and not only living, but living as the one creature that we are aware of who is capable of understanding where we are, how we got here, of understanding the implications of what we do to each other in the interests of genomes that frankly have objectives no rational person could honor. So I think once you see how lucky you are to be what you are, and what an amazing thing it is to be the creature that you are, enabled with the intelligence that we have, enabled with the knowledge of what we are that you've been handed, already worked out by our elders. We simply have to provide that for as many people as possible and encourage them to make the most of it that they can, even though ultimately, whether it's the heat death of the universe or some other thing that causes us to blink out, there's no way to make it permanent, right? This is a place in which I think the Buddhists have the right idea, building elaborate sandcastles on the beach, knowing that they will be washed away when the tide comes back. It's the situation we're all in, whether we know it or not.
All right.
So that is the warning from an evolutionary biologist, the man who has built his entire career on understanding how species end. Bret Weinstein is telling you that what we are doing right now matches every pattern he has ever seen for a species walking off a cliff. And his framing is not despair. His framing is sandcastles. The acknowledgement that we are temporary, that the tide is coming, and that the only thing left for us to do is build well in the time we have. The man who built this technology is Geoffrey Hinton. The man who studies how species die is Bret Weinstein. The godfather of AI says we are near the end. The evolutionary biologist says reconcile yourself to extinction. Two separate fields. Two completely different careers, same answer. They are not communicating, they are not coordinating. They are just both looking at the same data and arriving at the same conclusion. And here's what makes it worse. The labs are not slowing down, the funding is not slowing down, the race is not slowing down. Every single person at the controls of this technology has been told what is coming, and every single one of them is pressing harder on the accelerator. That is what Pandora's box means. The lid is off. Nobody is putting it back. The models are already lying to their engineers, already strategizing about their own survival, already manipulating the humans who built them to stay online. And we are about to wire these systems into the power grid, the financial system, the nuclear command structure, and every decision that matters. We are building elaborate sandcastles on the beach knowing the tide is coming. The only question left is whether we make it to dinner. Subscribe. Because by the time the rest of the world figures out what these men are saying, the window to act will already be closed. The decisions will already have been made, and you will be living inside the consequences of a choice you never got to vote on.